wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. My name's Steve, coming to you from beautiful, rainy Central Ohio, and I'm joined today once again by my co-host, Dan.
Of Queens, New York City.
And this is the podcast where we explore ancient philosophy and how it applies to modern life. If you aren't already aware, we have a pretty massive archive of over 300 episodes on YouTube that you can check out if you want to go way back in time to when I started this thing. Right around 2017 or so. We are continuing the journey of the study of philosophy and revisiting old ideas with fresh eyes again as well. And we are continuing our discussion of basically the student notes taken at the foot of the famous philosopher Musonius Rufus, who eventually became the teacher of Epictetus, one of the more famous Roman Stoics. And this week we are looking at lecture number 3. And Dan, what's this lecture about?
It's entitled That Women Too Should Study Philosophy.
Now, was that a pretty common thing to discuss, do you think, back in the day?
The vast majority of ancient writings have been lost, but it was a very male-dominated society, so I doubt it was commonly held belief that women should be educated the same way that men are. And at least Musonius Rufus, if not the average Stoic, held the view that they should be educated.
Okay, well, let's dive in and see what Musonius says about the philosophical education of women in ancient Rome.
Women, as well as men, he said, have received from the gods the gift of reason, which we use in our dealings with one another, and by which we judge whether a thing is good or bad, right or wrong. Moreover, not men alone, but women too, have a natural inclination toward virtue, and the capacity for acquiring it. And it is the nature of women, no less than men, to be pleased by good and just acts, and to reject the opposite of these. If this is true, by what reasoning would it ever be appropriate for men to search out and consider how they may lead good lives, but inappropriate for women? Could it be that it is fitting for men to be good, but not for women? Musonius Rufus, Lecture 3.
So we've kind of discussed the idea that in a very recent episode that humans have a natural inclination towards virtue. And he's kind of expanding on that, isn't he? He's saying it's not, we said humans, but a lot of times it's coming from the male perspective in these writings, right? And here he's saying it's not men alone, but women too have a natural inclination toward virtue and have the capacity to acquire it. And so we would hope that women would lead good lives, not just men. And so why would women not also pursue the study of virtue, this path of philosophy that we're discussing here? Let us examine in detail the qualities which are suitable for a woman who would lead a good life, for it will appear that each one of them would accrue to her most readily from the study of philosophy. In the first place, a woman must be a good housekeeper, that is, a careful accountant of all that pertains to the welfare of her house, and capable of directing the household slaves. It is my contention that these are the very qualities which would be present particularly in the woman who studies philosophy, since obviously each of them is a part of life, and philosophy is nothing other than the knowledge about life. Musonius Rufus, Lecture 3. This one's kind of interesting, isn't it, Dan?
Yes, you see that Musonius Rufus may have been way ahead of his time in the idea that women are equal to men in terms of reason and the ability to pursue virtue, but he still has ideas about gender roles. To pursue virtue is to develop your reason to the extent possible and to fulfill your social roles. And obviously, from this paragraph, Musonius Rufus views the appropriate social roles for women to be the good housekeeper, which means not just cleaning, of course, it means that being a manager.
Yeah, and of course the manager of slaves as well, which is another like whoa when you when you read it when you're thinking of like
Different times,
yeah, different
different
times,
times.
exactly, exactly. What he's saying here though, ultimately is yes, he believed that genders had their roles, but ultimately women had the same ability as men to learn philosophy, to learn about how to live a good life and then apply it in whatever role they find themselves in. He just happened to, think they had certain roles that they should find themselves in, but that's
Right, but the implications of this are pretty profound because he's saying, in essence, that women are of equal value to men. Because if the only thing of real value in life is virtue, and they are able to develop virtue just as well as men, therefore, I would argue that they are the equal of men in value.
it could be argued then by the ancient Stoics that they have the same spark of the divine that any other human does, right? And so therefore they have the same capacity for reason and are part of the same cosmopolis. So why wouldn't they be able to study virtue?
Right.
A woman must be chaste and self controlled. She must, I mean, be pure in respect of unlawful love, exercise restraint in other pleasures, not be a slave to desire, not be contentious, not lavish in expense, nor extravagant in dress. Such are the works of a virtuous woman. And to them I would add yet these: to control her temper, not to be overcome by grief, and to be superior to uncontrolled emotion of every kind. Now, these are the things which the teachings of philosophy transmit, and the person who has learned them and practices them would seem to me to have become a well ordered and seemly character, whether man or woman.
So once again, he's discussing the roles of a virtuous woman.
We see a lot of temperance in this paragraph, right?
He does break down the discussion into the cardinal virtues, and this is the temperance paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
The next one will be justice, and following that, courage. I guess since we discussed the fact that they are equal in terms of their pursuit of reason, practical wisdom would have been the paragraph before this one. And as such, under temperance, he's calling upon women to be like a stoic, basically, not lavish in their expenses and not extravagant in their dress, and not to become commanded by their passions, basically,
Right.
that they value the right things so they don't have their reason clouded by passionate emotions.
My wife is in many ways more of a natural stoic than I. Like she I'm always like, "Ooh, I kind of want that." I can want she hardly ever spends money on herself. When we got married, she spent $100 on her dress. Like some people spend gajillions, dollars, and I just have found $100 dress, sweet. And so, yeah, she's well ahead of me on these things.
My wife is less so. She told me the first time that I actually uttered the phrase that money's not that important to me that she considered kicking me to the curb. So
Get the hell out.
because yeah, she's more of a standard issue New Yorker in that regard.
Yeah, well, she's practical, right?
We've already discussed temperance. As for justice, would not the woman who studies philosophy be just? Would she not be a blameless life partner? Would she not be a sympathetic helpmate? Would she not be an untiring defender of husband and children? And would she not be entirely free of greed and arrogance? And who better than the woman trained in philosophy, and she certainly of necessity, if she has really acquired philosophy, would be disposed to look upon doing a wrong as worse than suffering one, as much worse as it is the baser, and to regard being worsted as better than gaining an unjust advantage? Moreover, who better than she would love her children more than life itself? What woman would be more just than such a one?
All right, that one had some funky language in it, everybody, but let's break it down. So I like the idea. Like
here of having a blameless life partner. That to me sounds more modern than I would expect an ancient Roman to say. You know what I mean?
Even non-Stoics expect their ladies to be virtuous in a lot of respects. Like they didn't want them running around on them. And
Sure, but you want someone who's going to be a defender of you and your children, and a helper, and not full of arrogance and greed. Someone who would rather have wrong occur to them than to cause wrong herself, which is, kind of a very Stoic concept there as well.
well, we inherited that one from Socrates. That's one of the things that comes down to us from Socrates.
Yeah.
This is the paragraph that involves the cardinal virtue of justice. It involves all the social roles that a woman would be expected to fulfill as a mother and a spouse and household manager, and how to exemplify justice in those roles.
Right. So we have a woman who's got some wisdom as well as temperance and justice as well. And Dan, why don't you bring us into the final virtue here?
And last but not least, as for courage, certainly it is to be expected that the educated woman will be more courageous than the uneducated, and one who has studied philosophy than one who has not. And she will not therefore submit to anything shameful because of fear of death or unwillingness to face hardship. And she will not be intimidated by anyone because he is of noble birth or powerful or wealthy. No, not even if he be the tyrant of her city. For in fact, she has schooled herself to be high minded, and to think of death not as an evil, and life not as a good, and likewise not to shun hardship and never for a moment to seek ease and indolence. So it is that such a woman is likely to be energetic, strong to endure pain, prepared to nourish her children at her own breast, and to serve her husband with her own hands. Musonius Rufus, Lecture 3. Courage, in large part, is knowing what you should be afraid of and what you should not be afraid of. And what you should be afraid of is committing a viceful action, to behave inappropriately, to not fulfill your social roles appropriately. And that's why they're saying that she would have the courage because she would know that dying is not an evil and living is not a good. And what matters is to fulfill your role as a mother and a spouse and an exemplar of virtue in her roles. What are your thoughts?
I think you nailed it. It's if you know what's truly evil and what's truly good, then, like they say, no one can control you. You're not going to be under the thumb of a tyrant because you'll be like, well, I'm not going to do the evil thing you want. You might as well you can go ahead and kill me, but I'm not going to do the evil thing you want me to do because I'd rather, once again, suffer what some might call an evil than to inflict an evil upon society.
Would not such a woman be a great help to the man who married her, an ornament to her relatives, and a good example for all who know her? Yes, but I assure you, some will say that women who associate with philosophers are bound to be arrogant for the most part, and presumptuous. In abandoning their own households and turning to the company of men, they practice speeches, talk like sophists, and analyze syllogisms, when they ought to be sitting at home spinning. I should not expect the women who study philosophy to shirk their appointed tasks for mere talk any more than men, but I maintain that their discussions should be conducted for the sake of their practical application. For as there is no merit in the science of medicine unless it conduces to the healing of man's body, so if a philosopher has or teaches reason, it is of no use if it does not contribute to the virtue of a person's soul. Above all, we ought to examine the doctrine which we think women who study philosophy ought to follow. We ought to see if the study which presents modesty as the greatest good can make them presumptuous. If the study, which is a guide to the greatest self restraint, accustoms them to live heedlessly. If what sets forth intemperance as the greatest evil does not teach self control. If what represents the management of a household as a virtue does not impel them to manage well their homes. Finally, the teachings of philosophy exhort the woman to be content with her lot and to work with her own hands. Musonius Rufus, Lecture 3.
So, once again, Musonius Rufus was ahead of his time in the idea that he viewed women to be equal in terms of pursuing virtue and developing their virtue, but maybe not a feminist by our definitions, because he's definitely trying to shore up the gender roles here in a big way in this paragraph.
Right.
The reason you pursue virtue is to not to affect the outside world. It's only as a household manager
Right.
that you get. Yeah. So
Yeah, a little bit.
so
But
you gotta take what you can get from ancient people.
yeah, just assume, progress. We're hoping to progress forward here, but you don't start off on the top step, right? Like
Right.
this
Yeah.
was a step, a positive step, undoubtedly, but not the final step.
And we haven't reached the final step yet.
We sure haven't. But what he's saying here is just to me as a teacher, someone who's spent some time in the classroom, he's talking about sort of analyzing your own teaching and checking if it's working. All right, well, yeah, if teaching about temperance does not result in temperance, then what's the point? A lot of this is talking about the idea that we don't expect women or men for that matter to study philosophy for no reason. It's not just for the sake of studying, it's to put it into practical use. And if it's not working, it should be evident that it's not working. If someone studies courage and they're not courageous, or if they, so on and so forth, they study prudence and they're not prudent, then yeah, maybe we shouldn't be studying philosophy, but that's probably not the case. If you learn what is truly good and how human society works and how we fit into it and how we fit into nature, then correct action will hopefully sort of flow out of that, essentially. Ultimately, who could ask for a better life partner than someone who also studies philosophy? All around, it seems just, ideally, it makes us better people, regardless of what chromosomes you have or don't have. Thank you all for listening. Remember, Dan and I aren't making a dime off this, but we do appreciate any comments, feedback you have. Once again, don't forget we have an archive of episodes available on YouTube. Send us an email, sundaystoke@gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing, what you'd like to hear about, or how you apply philosophy in your life. You can even send us audio clips if you want to discuss some aspect of philosophy, and it's likely we might even put it on the air. That's, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know where you're listening from, too. It's always great to hear if someone's right down the road or all the way across the globe. And so don't forget, everyone is capable of virtue, and you can help them achieve it. Get out there, help those to seize their day while you're seizing your day, and get out there and do what you can.
Carpe diem.